Hello everyone. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than words. When a familiar face disappears, it leaves behind not just memories, but a deep ache in the hearts of those left behind. Some stories are too powerful to forget. Stories that shaped lives, inspired millions, and echoed across generations. Today we take a moment to remember, to reflect, and to honor a soul whose presence may be gone, but whose legacy lives on.
In the smoky twilight of American music, when jazz met heartbreak and the radio crooned with velvet melancholy, a voice emerged, smooth as satin, sharp as a switchblade. That voice belonged to Francis Albert Sinatra, born December 12, 1915, in Hoboken, New Jersey. Before he ever wore a tuxedo or raised a glass on stage, he was the son of Sicilian immigrants, a scrappy kid with a chipped tooth and a stubborn dream. Frank Sinatra will become a symbol of class, charisma, and contradiction, a man who defined cool and shattered convention, who sang like he was living every note and lived like every night was the last. Sinatra's early life was unglamorous. His father was a fireman, his mother a politically savvy midwife nicknamed Dolly. From the very beginning, Sinatra wasn't one to follow rules. He dropped out of high school, floated through odd jobs, and fell hard for music. He idolized Bing Crosby, but he didn't want to sound like anyone else. He wanted to take a song and bleed emotion into it, to phrase a lyric in a way that made people feel like it was written just for them. His big break came in the late 1930s when he joined the Harry James Band, and then more famously, the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. Dorsey taught him breath control, precision, and discipline. But it was clear Sinatra wasn't meant to stay in the background. By the early 1940s, he broke out as a solo artist. Teenage girls screamed for him. Bobby Soxers fainted at his concerts. In a war-torn America longing for comfort and romance, Sinatra's voice was both salve and seduction. But his rise wasn't without turbulence. He was dogged by rumors about his relationships, about his supposed mob ties, about his ego. When his career dipped in the late 40s, many thought he was finished. His record sales plummeted. He lost his recording contract and film deals. But Sinatra, ever the fighter, refused to fade. In 1953, he delivered a performance in From Here to Eternity that shocked critics and audiences alike. His role as the tragic Private Maggio earned him an Academy Award and resurrected his career overnight. From that point on, Sinatra didn't just return, he dominated. He signed with Capitol Records and began crafting a new image, one of emotional depth and masculine vulnerability. Albums like In the Wee Small Hours and Songs for Swingin' Lovers were more than collections of songs. They were mood pieces, emotional arcs with carefully arranged highs and devastating lows. With arranger Nelson Riddle, he sculpted a sound that was both lush and intimate. Sinatra's voice aged like bourbon. It lost the youthful sweetness but gained gravity. He became a master of phrasing, knowing exactly when to hold back, when to linger on a syllable, when to break your heart. He was a crooner, yes, but also an interpreter, capable of turning a pop lyric into an existential lament. Off stage, Sinatra was a man of contradictions. He was fiercely loyal and explosively temperamental. He championed civil rights, refusing to perform at segregated venues. Yet he was also known for his legendary feuds and occasional outbursts. He had powerful friends, from presidents to mafiosi, and his personal life was a whirlwind of affairs, marriages, and public drama. His relationship with Ava Gardner was especially volatile, a passion both cinematic and ruinous. Sinatra also transformed Las Vegas. Alongside the Rat Pack, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, he turned the desert city into an epicenter of suave entertainment. On stage, they joked, drank, and exuded effortless charm. Behind the scenes, they held immense cultural sway. They weren't just entertainers, they were tastemakers. Sinatra especially wielded his fame like a scepter, insisting on respect, demanding excellence, and often getting his way. As the 1960s turned to the 1970s, music changed. The Beatles and rock and roll eclipsed the crooners. But Sinatra still found ways to stay relevant. He flirted with retirement but always returned. His 1969 hit, My Way, became an anthem of defiance and self-determination, forever tied to his image. It was less a song than a statement, a summing up of a life lived unapologetically. Behind the showbiz glitz, Sinatra was also deeply patriotic. He supported American troops, performed for soldiers, and expressed unwavering belief in the promise of America. even as he remained aware of its flaws. He was a man who could play both cynic and idealist, often in the same song. He continued performing well into his later years, his voice weathered but still commanding. By the 1980s and 90s, he was a living legend, his concerts attended like pilgrimages. People came not just to hear the songs, but to be near the man who was the music, who had become synonymous with the art of performance itself. When Sinatra died on May 14, 1998, the world didn't just lose a singer. It lost an era, a myth, a voice that had narrated heartbreak, triumph, loneliness, and swagger for more than half a century. Tributes poured in from every corner: politicians, musicians, old friends, and young fans. The lights of the Las Vegas Strip were dimmed in his honor. But Sinatra never really left. His recordings remained timeless, his influence visible in artists across genres. Every crooner who sings with a wink, every balladeer who leans into a lyric, carries a trace of him. His life was imperfect, messy, brilliant. He was not merely a star. He was a constellation, sprawling across decades, lighting up every stage he touched. Francis Albert Sinatra lived as he sang, with passion, with elegance, and often with fire. He wasn't just the chairman of the board, he was the soundtrack of America's 20th century. And as long as there are lonely hearts and midnight radios, Frank Sinatra will sing on. There was something elemental about Power's Boothe, the thundercloud of a man, all quiet storms and smoldering presence. His was not the sort of face you forgot. The strong, square jaw, the piercing eyes, often shadowed by ambiguity. A voice that rumbled from somewhere deep, like the rumble of boots on Texas dirt. Over the course of his career, he carved out a unique space in the American acting landscape, a man of contradictions, equally convincing as a noble leader or a chilling villain. Boothe was not just an actor, he was a force of atmosphere. Born on June 1, 1948, in the modest town of Snyder, Texas, Powers Allen Boothe came into the world with grit already stitched into his bones. He was the youngest of three brothers, raised in a farming family where hard work and self-reliance were more than values. They were law. His father, Merrill Vestal Boothe, named him after a friend who died heroically in World War II, and that legacy of strength would linger with Powers all his life. In that dust-swept part of West Texas, you either bent to the wind or became it. Boothe chose the latter. But the boy from Snyder had dreams bigger than fields and fence posts. As a young man, he discovered the stage and with it, a clarity of purpose. He pursued his passion first at Southwest Texas State University, where his natural talent blossomed, and then at Southern Methodist University, earning a Master of Fine Arts in Drama. While others might have sought fame directly, Boothe honed his craft with discipline, study, and reverence for the art form. It was never about stardom for him. It was about truth. Boothe began his career on the stage, grinding through repertory companies and Shakespearean roles that would sharpen his tools as a performer. At the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and in various New York productions, he stood out, not just for his talent, but for his gravity. His Broadway debut came in 1979 with Lone Star, a role that let him wear his Texas roots on his sleeve. He was never trying to impress. He simply was grounded, magnetic whole. But it was television that delivered Boothe his first real taste of national attention. In 1980, he portrayed cult leader Jim Jones in the harrowing television film Guyana Tragedy, the story of Jim Jones. It was a bold and risky role, one that demanded menace, charisma, and madness in equal measure. Boothe delivered all three with terrifying precision. His performance earned him a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Limited Series or Movie, a recognition that confirmed what the theater world already knew. Powers Boothe was not to be underestimated. What followed was a career marked by consistency, subtlety, and power. While other actors chased marquee roles, Boothe sank into characters with quiet fury. In the 1980s, he found steady work in films like Southern Comfort, Red Dawn, and Extreme Prejudice, tough atmospheric movies that leaned into his brooding intensity. He had the sort of presence that elevated material, even when scripts faltered. His characters were never flat. They always suggested something deeper, something dangerous lurking beneath. In 1993, he left another indelible mark with his portrayal of Curly Bill Brocious in Tombstone. It was a film bursting with larger-than-life personalities, Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday, Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp, but Boothe held his ground with effortless menace. As the leader of the Cowboys, his Curly Bill was smiling one moment and savage the next. You couldn't take your eyes off him. It was Boothe at his best, measured, magnetic, merciless. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Boothe became a fixture in American television and film. He played former White House Chief of Staff Alexander Hagan Nixon and gave a grounded, haunted performance in Blue Sky opposite Jessica Lange. But it was on the small screen that he truly dominated. In HBO's Deadwood, he delivered one of the finest performances of his career as Cy Tolliver, a saloon owner with a poisonous charm. In 24, he played Vice President Noah Daniels, a man who balanced patriotism with quiet menace. He was the rare actor who could sell power without ever raising his voice. Even as blockbuster franchises became the norm in Hollywood, Boothe found his place. He appeared as Gideon Malik in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, first in the Avengers and later reprising the role in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He didn't need a costume or CGI to command attention, just a stare and a single line spoken in that gravel-deep voice. Boothe also lent his talents to voice acting, where his vocal instrument, rumbling, slow, rich with implication, made him a natural fit. He voiced the villainous Gorilla Grodd in the DC animated series Justice League and brought weight to video games like Turok and Hitman Absolution. Wherever his voice appeared, it was unmistakable. Despite playing hard-edged characters, those who knew Boothe described him as kind, professional, and deeply devoted to his family. He married his college sweetheart, Pam Cole, in 1969, and the couple had 2 children. Off-screen, he was no brooding cowboy or Washington schemer, just a father, a husband, and a man who valued privacy and authenticity. In May 2017, Powers Boothe passed away in Los Angeles due to complications related to pancreatic cancer. He was 68 years old. The news came quietly, without the fanfare some actors demand, but for those who had watched him work over the years, it was the closing of a chapter written in bold, dark ink. Powers Boothe never sought the spotlight. He didn't chase celebrity, nor did he play to the crowd. Instead, he treated acting like a sacred trust, something earned, not taken for granted. He didn't just perform characters. He inhabited them, gave them souls, flaws, breath. He made you believe that behind every smile was a secret, and behind every word a wound. In a world crowded with noise, Boothe spoke in silences. In a business hungry for applause, he moved like a whisper in a thunderstorm, quiet but unforgettable. And though he often played villains, the legacy he leaves behind is one of integrity, precision, and a deep, abiding respect for storytelling. There are actors, and then there are anchors, those rare few who, with just a glance, remind you why stories matter. Powers Boothe was one of them. In the cotton fields of Mississippi, under the sweltering southern sun, a boy was born who would one day be crowned the undisputed king of the blues. Riley B. King, known to the world simply as B.B. King, entered the world on September 16, 1925, near the town of Itabena. Raised on the rich but unforgiving soil of the Delta, B.B. grew up amidst hardship, poverty, and the haunting rhythms of gospel and blues that echoed through the churches and juke joints of the South. From this land, both cruel and beautiful, a sound was born that would carry his name across the globe. As a young boy, B.B. was shaped by the voices of the past. He sang in the gospel choir at Elkhorn Baptist Church, and his earliest dreams were spiritual, hopeful. But the blues, raw, aching, honest, called to him. He picked cotton during the day, dreaming of something more. His first guitar was a modest gift, but in his hands, it became an extension of his soul. He learned the instrument with hunger and reverence, studying recordings of Blind Lemon Jefferson, Robert Johnson, and later T-Bone Walker. But B.B. was never one to copy. He played as if each note were pulled from his own blood. By the 1940s, B.B. had made his way to Memphis, Tennessee, the city that would become his launching pad. There at WDAY, the first radio station in America programmed for a black audience, he worked as a singer and DJ, earning the nickname Beale Street Blues Boy. It was eventually shortened to B.B., and the name stuck, just as his sound did. In 1949, B.B. King recorded his first hit, 3 O'Clock Blues, which skyrocketed up the R&B charts. It was a slow, aching tune that spoke of loneliness, betrayal, and longing. With that song, he established himself not just as a musician, but as a storyteller, someone who could wring tears from strings and summon heartache with his voice. His guitar, which he famously named Lucille, became a character in its own right, weeping and wailing in duet with him. What set B.B. apart was his style, a smooth, singing tone combined with stinging, single-note solos. He rarely played chords. Instead, he bit notes until they cried. He didn't need speed or flash. Every lick was deliberate, expressive, drenched in soul. The call-and response between his voice and Lucille created a sound that was immediately recognizable, deeply human. Through the 1950s and 60s, B.B. King toured relentlessly, sometimes playing 300 nights a year. He performed in segregated clubs and black-only theaters, hauling his band from town to town in battered buses. He was the soundtrack to post-war Black America, resilient, proud, and defiant in the face of struggle. And yet, even as he became a giant in the world of rhythm and blues, mainstream recognition remained elusive. That changed in the late 1960s when white audiences, drawn by the British blues revival and artists like Eric Clapton and the Rolling Stones, began to recognize B.B. as the originator he was. His 1969 hit, The Thrill Is Gone, became a crossover success, reaching a wide audience and earning him a Grammy. The song's mournful melody and haunting orchestration introduced millions to the blues, and B.B. stood tall as its prophet. But King didn't merely rest on past glories. He collaborated widely with U2 on When Love Comes to Town, with Clapton on the album Riding with the King, and with countless musicians who considered it an honor just to be in his presence. And though the venues changed, from dusty bars to grand concert halls, his approach never did. Every performance was personal. He played as if the blues were still happening to him in real time. Off stage, B.B. King was gentle, thoughtful, and endlessly gracious. He spoke openly about the challenges of fame, race, and age. Despite his fame, he never lost his humility or his connection to his roots. He was knighted by kings and honored by presidents, but he always remained Riley from Ida Bena, a man who carried the stories of his people through song. Throughout his life, he received over a dozen Grammy Awards, the National Medal of Arts, and induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But B.B. didn't measure his legacy in trophies. His true reward was the emotional connection he formed with audiences. From the juke joints of Mississippi to the concert halls of Paris, his music transcended boundaries. The blues, once seen as niche or regional, became global through his voice and fingers. When B.B. King passed away on May 14, 2015, the world mourned not just the death of a musician, but the loss of a voice that had defined generations. Tributes came from every corner of the musical world, from blues legends to rock stars to classical musicians. They all understood the king was gone, but his kingdom remained. Today, B.B. King's influence is still everywhere. His guitar style lives on in the hands of countless musicians. His songs continue to be played, studied, and loved. And his spirit, resilient, soulful, humble, still walks the back roads of the blues. B.B. King wasn't just a guitarist. He was a witness, a preacher of pain and joy, a reminder that even in sorrow there can be beauty. That music, when played from the heart, can speak louder than any words. Through Lucille, he told the story of America, its wounds, its dreams, its defiant hope. And that story, like his music, will never fade. In their memory, though they are no longer with us, their contributions to music, entertainment, and culture continue to inspire and shape the world today. Their legacies live on, reminding us of the impact one can leave behind. Thank you for watching. RIP Daily Update.